everybody, and welcome back to Brainwave. And finally, I have a chance to talk about Secret Invasion Episode 2 Promises. Fury grapples with the present and past and present. Said that wrong. But I'm very excited to break down this episode. Like I said, did not get a chance to do it sooner. I was away for a little bit, then I came back, and now I'm doing it on 4th of July. I'm actually recording it on 4th of July. So happy 4th of July, everybody. Uh, I am doing a video to celebrate that on my channel, so go check that out now if you guys are interested. Yeah. So, yeah, going to be doing a video of that on my channel. And, of course, I am working on trying to help Wolf with his stuff, and as soon as that is done, which it's looking pretty good so far. So I think if I'm correct, I can't promise anything, like I said, because this has been going on for a while. I think we should be able to have this done by 2 videos from now. I think, hopefully, keyword hopefully. But yeah, so hopefully that is what's going to happen. But for now, let's get straight into this breakdown, shall we? Like I said, I have my paper because copyright issues. Still trying to figure out the copyright stuff as well. Been looking into that to see how I can actually get footage without getting copyright struck. But for now, we're going to talk about this here. So first thing I want to talk about, the episode starts off with scenes from Captain Marvel, which was set in 1995, and these are all original scenes from Captain Marvel, literally copy and paste. And then it kind of cuts away from that and goes straight to 1997. And this is important because it's actually set in Brixton, London. And this is where Fury actually meets up with a bunch of different Skrulls that have agreed with Talos to meet him there so that they can make their promise, the one that will eventually be broken, or not necessarily broken, but more have been forgotten. But Fury meets a group of Skrulls, like I said, and this includes Gravik and Gaia. So he met them when they were both really young. And Talos explains that he can trust him, and Fury's promise is that Captain Marvel, aka Carol Danvers, and him will look for a home for the Skrulls while they keep his safe. And that was the promise. And as you can see, after time has passed, a lot of time, they believe that that promise is no longer being kept. Now, directly after this, we go straight to Moscow. But before we do, we learn something very, very crucial about Gravik. We learn that his parents died trying to fight off the Kree, and that he piloted a ship by himself on the enemy territory. That is kind of crazy for Gravik, who was basically really young at this time for a Skrull. So that's kind of crazy. And it's why he's able to do all of this stuff now, because he's always thinking ahead. And that's what Sonya actually warned Fury about, because these Skrulls think ahead. And it's really showing now. It's really starting to show. Now, like I said, we go back to Moscow, and Gravik is walking away from Hill's body. Gaia is basically just confused. She's looking at this and looking at it as chaos, right? Skrull Imposter gets captured, one of the ones that was carrying the bombs, and he says that he is an American trying to fool the Russians that Americans were the ones that did this, and so that they can start a world war, which is actually what starts happening here, because near the end of this episode, a lot of Americans' allies go to Russia's side. So it's very interesting. But yes, Fury gets dragged away from Hill's body by a Russian who turns out to be Talos. And then directly after that, they end up on this train. This train is going from Moscow to Warsaw, and Talos baits the Russian military by acting as a woman, and he says these lines. He says that they show him the picture of Fury, and he says that finding a black American on this train is less likelier than finding aliens or something like that on those lines. And that seemed to drag them away pretty well. So that's very, very interesting that Talos knows how to communicate with these people, though he has been on Earth for a very, very long time. And speaking of him being on Earth for a very long time, Fury uh, talks about different things on the train, including him living in segregation. If you don't know, segregation between separation between different races. This was not too far from the time we are now. So the fact that Fury even lived in this is kind of insane. It's kind of why he's a part of trying to keep the world safe. And that backstory really does make sense for him. Top of that, he says that him and his mother played a game on train rides that they would use to take on the colored cars of the train, and it was called Tell Me Something I Don't Know. His mother played that constantly, and he says that his mother were asking questions about his personal life, one of which was, Tell me something I don't know about him and Susie, or me and Susie. And Susie at the time was, I'm assuming, related to, not related, but one of Nick Fury's love interests, and it is very crazy to see because the fact that he lied about his position with her, talking about polka dotted bullfrogs. His mother realized that it was a lot deeper than it seemed to be. So, although Fury was trying to lie and get her off of the trail, it just turned out that she was able to connect more with him through that lie because she knows that he's making up this kind of crazy lie, and it's just showing how crazy the situation actually is. And he plays this game with Talos. He asks him to tell him something he doesn't know about the destruction of Skrullos, which is the Skrull home planet. And then he talks about the destruction or the millions of Skrulls that fled. Talos plays with him. He tells him that he knows everything, but then ends up telling him that millions of Skrulls are living on Earth amongst humans. Nick Fury's response to this is him getting very aggravated, telling Talos that Earth is not enough room for two species. Species is that right? Species is I don't know. I don't know if that's correct or not. Species, like with an S. I don't know, whatever. We'll get back to that. But he talks about how there's not enough room on Earth, right? And how people, humans, have been fighting since they could stand upright, meaning as soon as their governments were in place, they have continued to fight over land, whatever it is. And he's kind of right about that. And it will kind of play off on what Gravik says about the human race later. However, he says Talos tells him that every Skrull that is not a part of Emperor Drog's group answered him when he contacted them. Now, we don't necessarily know who Emperor Drog is. We haven't seen him yet. We assume that he's behind the whole Skrulls on Earth operation. And yeah, I think it's going to get a little bit crazy when we do meet him because Gravik's already nuts. What about this guy? So then we head to Maria Hill's death and funeral. Fury meets her mother, and she's talking about how no one will tell her where her daughter died or anything about it, even though she's owed a great gratitude. Her daughter is owed a great gratitude of whatever, but she won't tell her. They won't tell her where the daughter died. Fury tells her it was in Moscow and it was quick. The mother responds by saying she'd follow you to she'd follow you to hell if it was required. And that hits Fury kind of deep, I'm assuming. And he says that I'm sorry I couldn't protect her. It was a trap set for me. And in order to hurt him, they hurt her. His mother responds her mother responds to that by saying she's taking him in a box. She's taking her in a box because of you, and that's kind of crazy. That line in general is kind of nuts. This man did try to do so much to stop these bombs, and the mother of the daughter that was killed trying to stop the Fury imposter ends up saying that, oh, I'm taking my daughter in a box because you couldn't save her. That's kind of crazy. This show is so good so far, man. I gotta say, it's incredible. But but Fury tells her that, and she walks back to the funeral section. But then we hear a bunch of different news channels, some of which are CUV and FXN. FXN is most likely meant to represent Fox News. CVN is meant to probably represent uh, CCV or CNV. Am I saying that wrong? That's a classic news site. How did I forget that? Whatever. It's meant to. You'll know when you see it off of the show what kind of news website. I think it's CNV News, I believe. But they're all talking about how it is suspected to be America, besides Fox News, who says that America has not laid a finger on it and it is false flag written all over it. Now, Gravik did not give Fury what he wanted by killing him, and he tells this to Gaia while they are driving to the Skrull Council meeting because he assumes that Fury wants to be killed instead of Maria Hill. So he did not kill him. And he talks to Gaia about trying to change the world. And we could see that Gaia is already kind of skeptical here because she wants to change the world, but she believes there's another way that can happen besides killing as many people as they did. Now, they finally get to the green meeting room where Gravik meets the Skrull Council. This is in a building somewhere in Moscow. And Gravik meets up with all the members of this council. And you cannot wait to hear who these Skrull members account for. By the way, the green meeting room is green to represent that they are all Skrulls in the room. Let's talk about who's in this room. We have the Secretary General of the United States, I believe. We have the Prime Minister of Europe. Prime Minister, I don't really know if it's. I think it's of the UK. And then we have the NATO leader. When the Skrulls said they were infiltrating governments, I didn't think they were literally going to take over the government. But they have, and it's getting really bad. So they talk about how Gravik disobeyed the council, but he says it is justified for Nick Fury lied to them and has not given them a home, and he wants to make sure that if they do try to get kicked off of Earth, that they are able to win a war against the humans since they lost to the Kree, so that they can keep Earth for themselves, and Gravik says he will not be willing to lose it. And obviously, like I said, this makes references to the Kree War, which we saw in Captain Marvel, and how Captain Marvel was actually fighting on the side of the Kree. So that is insane. Then they talk about humans being their own demise. I think Gravik brings this up because they're concerned about killing humans. However, he says that humans are going to be their own demise. This is similar to what Ultron believed in Avengers Age of Ultron. However, we know that Vision corrected him, saying that they have decency and they have heart. So Gravik doesn't seem to believe that. He's going off of Ultron standards, which makes him even more dangerous because Ultron was crazy. So Gravik convinces most of the Scroll members besides Shirley. They all turn back into Scrolls, while Shirley does not. Shirley leaves the meeting and she tells Talos, who she has contact with, she tells Talos that Gravik has become the Scroll General, and Talos wants to set up a public meeting with him in a public place so that they can discuss his daughter. And this is kind of contradicting what Gravik has been saying. Gravik has been saying that Talos is a failed general, when realistically, he's planning ahead while also trying to make sure that he can talk face to face with Gravik. So I wouldn't say he's entirely failed, and it's just only proving that. But for now, let's continue, because Gravik goes back to New Scrolls for a very, very warm welcome by the Scrolls, and he tells a woman that it was not possible without her, and I'm assuming that was kind of meant to reference all of the Scrolls for kind of supporting him, I guess. And that's kind of the thing when you become a general, your people need to support you, or else you're not really going to be able to do much. And he talks to Pagan. He tells him to go to the lab where there is a device inside. Now, this device is being tested by Rosa Dalton, aka, well, a Scroll who is acting as Rosa Dalton. But they talk about the absence of the harvest. Now, we don't know exactly what the harvest is, but I'm assuming it's some kind of material that is used to power this machine. It's going to take a lot to power it. But Gaia sneaks into this room following Pagan. She hears everything and she sees this machine working. But before we know much more about it, it cuts to Rhodey talking to the national leaders about the bombing. And some of these national leaders in this room are probably Skrulls. Because you can see that a lot of them are wearing green jewelry, while the others are not. So some people think that this is hinting at who the Skrulls are. I don't really know if that's the case exactly, but there's definitely at least one Skrull in that room. Now, they're talking about this. Rhodey is telling them that we're not gonna do anything. We're not gonna stand by anything unless you can give us evidence that we Americans were truly the ones that did it. And Slovakia, I believe the leader of Slovakia keeps rolling uh, her eyes at him, and he says the greatest line ever of Marvel history. He says that if Slovakia rolls their eyes at me one more time, I'm going to put on the suit and carpet bomb them. It is the greatest line I've ever heard in Marvel history. It's almost better than boom, you're looking for this. Okay? It is high quality line. But after that meeting, Fury calls Rhodey in this meeting center, and he's got eyes on him somehow because he describes his whole outfit, and he tells him, uh, Brody seems kind of aggravated. Fury tells him, "Who's getting you upset?" He says, "Slovakia," and then he says the same line back. He just says, "Carpet bomb him." Well, I guess that's the solution to everything, really. Just Rhodey flying in, just boom. But anyway, so Rhodey tells him to meet at the Burner's Tavern. So Fury goes over to this Burner's Tavern. He gets checked by the bodyguard that is there, and Rhodey is sitting near the middle of this tavern and gives him a bourbon, which he said was his favorite drink in the first episode, when Sonya gives him another kind of beverage, I believe. So he's given a bourbon, and he tells Rhodey that he should be worried about poison. And this is probably because they want him dead at this point. The government sees him as a hassle now instead of an ally. so they probably don't want anything to do with him. And they talk about how Fury set the stage, or Russians believe that Fury did this, was a part of this massacre, and Rhodey tells him that he set up World War III while also being a part of American allies, while also shifting the American allies to Russia. Let's draw Russian side. Yeah, it's complicated, but that's not good because America has a lot of allies. Fury mentions to Rhodes about the scrolls, who Rhodey actually knows about from a press conference 15 years ago, where shape shifting aliens have sent their light chips to Earth, which is actually a reference to a movie scene in past Avengers movies. I don't know exactly which one. I have to remember. I know it's a reference, though, to, I believe, not Captain Marvel. I believe Avengers. It's a reference to one. I think it's a reference to. I think it's a reference to. I think it's a reference to like Civil War, Iron Man 3-ish. It might be a reference to Iron Man 3. It actually might be a reference to Iron Man 3. I think that was right. Iron Man 3 or Age of Ultron. Either or, I think, is the reference there. But let's continue. And then during this conversation, Fury talks about their power. He says that they had to gain their power, and Fury wants to use his power for good. Rhodey says the same thing, but he says not in the way he's doing it, and he does not trust Fury to handle this by himself, so he is firing him before he can do anything else. And when Fury hears this, the bodyguard tries to shove him out of the bar, pretty much, to get him in a car that Rhodey has booked for him, and he breaks the bodyguard's arm. So he goes up to Rhodey and he says, Rhodey tells him, now you wonder why you're out. He tells him, I'm Nick Fury. Even when I'm out, I'm in. That is another crazy line. This show has a ton of crazy lines in this, I have to say. So, uh, we continue. Sonya walks into a meat store, and another crazy line. The guy at the meat at the checkout ask her who she is, and she says, "I'm above your pay grade." The man's just dead. What do you even respond to that, bro? But she goes behind the meat section, where she opens the freezer and she's a bunch of men torturing this human, aka Brogan, who is actually a Skrull. She sees this happening and she tells them that she will be taking over. And when she says she will be taking over, she uses this pair of scissors to cut off a finger off of this Skrull to make sure it's a Skrull. She didn't know if it was a human. And she just went snip. So that's kind of crazy. But we cut away from this and we go back to Gaia looking at a computer with a bunch of different DNA samples under Rosa Dalton's name. Some of these include, wait for it, these are good. Groot's, which is Flora Colossus species, Frost Beast, which we saw in Thor, and I believe that, yeah, Thor. We see Call Obsidian, who was one of Thanos' members of the Black Order. And then we have Extremis, who were in Iron Man 3. Basically, the glowing guys that can regen their limbs. So, we're kind of doomed. Right? But we head back to Sonya's interrogation scene, where she is given Brogan a biochemical imperative that basically heats your blood to about 160 Celsius. Anyway, to torture. Anyway, Sonya gets the information she needs out of Brogan, and she escapes through the hatch below him. calling it, referencing it to Distrosky, which is I believe, an old movie where a man has to escape out of a hatch and it leads to the lower part of the city. So that's pretty interesting. After this part, Gravik. Actually, no. While this is happening, while uh, Sonya is escaping, Gravik and Brogan infiltrate the facility, and I'm just gonna say they perform some Mortal Kombat finishers, bro. Gravik's over here going shink, 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 and then like he goes crazy where he like grabs the knife, puts it through him, and drags it upwards. I mean, how, bro? I'm like, bro, what kind of like what kind of button mashing did you have to do to get that one? And then he also like grabs a guy and like I can't say this because YouTube does not let me talk about this stuff. So that's probably correct, but yeah, it goes kind of crazy. Um, so after they do their Mortal Kombat finishers, they realize that Brogan has spoke after they head back to their safe house and is surrounded by police. So they bring him to the woods and they shoot him. Obviously, this scars Gaia pretty much, and I think she feels at this point regret. I mean, I wouldn't see why she wouldn't, because I'd be kind of scarred too. But we see that Fury has his own safe house after this scene. He finds his own safe house after denying Rhodey's offer, his car ride offer. He finds his own car in his own safe house. He drives to his house where we see Verna as a Skrull, and when Fury walks in, she turns back into a human. So Fury's got a wife, and his wife is a Skrull. Does he know the wife is a Skrull? I have zero clue. So yeah, maybe he does know it's Verna. I feel like it would be kind of weird for him not to. But if he doesn't, that's gonna be a big plot twist. And then they dance, and that's the episode. It's packed. This episode was packed. Honestly, my words can't even properly describe it. That's why I'm really trying to get you guys some footage of the episode without getting it copyrighted so that you guys can actually see what I'm talking about. But overall, this episode was crazy. My recommendations, go watch it. It's incredible. I mean, I couldn't wish for a better, really. And I think it will get better somehow. So I'm really, really excited. Like I said, about that. Also, might do another Five Nights at Freddy's themed video for you guys that don't know much about Five Nights at Freddy's lore and want to see the Five Nights at Freddy's movies. So stay tuned for that. That might be coming really, really soon. Season 3 of Secret Invasion actually dropping tomorrow as well. So breakdown of that, don't know when it's going to be out, but it will be out after that point. Might also start talking about some theories about Secret Invasion as well. So it's going to be pretty exciting. Pretty exciting overall. Like I said, Wolf is like he's getting there. He's really getting close. We have been trying to get him here, so hopefully he will be here very, very soon. But for now, that's going to be the end of the video, guys. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed, and I will see you all in the next one.